Hello and welcome to the Bucketlister podcast. Join your host Keith Crockford along with special guests who have travelled the world, here to share stories of their adventures and plenty of inspo to add to your bucket list. Now, let's get into today's episode.
Hello everyone and welcome to this episode of the Bucketlister podcast. I am your host Keith Crockford and today I am back chatting with Jake. Hi Jake.
How are we doing, Keith?
Very well, thank you. Very well indeed, because I am just about to start packing my bags to think about my next trip, which I know you're going to be doing as well this week, because we're both heading out this weekend on our next trips. And I'm heading off to Gozo, you're heading off to Tukau, and I always enjoy packing my bag, which is why we thought today we'd talk about the interesting topic of packing our bags.
Yeah, it seemed to fit quite nicely. We were having a chat earlier about kind of, all the packing that we have to do and whether people love it or hate it. It is a necessary part of going away, but there's definitely a few things that we've learned over the years that make it a lot easier for people when they head away. So kind of figured it'd be quite useful to discuss that because it's something that always comes up on trips. But by then it's a little bit late. So quite good to cover a lot of that stuff off before people go.
Yeah, I think I think it's one of those stresses for people, isn't it? That, you're excited about your trip and then a massive stress is like, how do I get all my stuff into this small bag, or have I forgotten anything, or do I need to take 10 of these or 2 of these? It's just one thing that people probably don't need to deal with, like literally just before they're heading off on their trip, is it?
No. So, the last thing you want is for the trip to start off stressfully because, you've struggled to pack what you need, or you're not sure what you need, or, that should be the least stressful part of the journey. And in fact, if you are going away on kind of an organized thing, it shouldn't be stressful at all because that should have all been taken care of for you. But yeah, it is something that people do tend to leave to the last minute.
We can't pack people's bags for them. We don't offer that service yet. That's not an add-on that we currently have.
We might have to. We might have to start, maybe looking into something like that. But yeah, definitely, if you can take care of the packing, and that's the only thing that you might find stressful, then we'll do the rest. But yeah, definitely a few tips and tricks to make it a little bit easier. Are you the kind of person that packs days or weeks in advance, or do you pack the day before?
Generally the day.
On the day.
On the day. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I've done some trips in the past where I've had to pack for 2 trips and I've switched my bags in the car park and jumped onto another plane as soon as I've got back to go on the next trip. So in some respects, you've got to be super organized. And this one's a little bit difficult for me because I haven't actually been on a bucket list trip since July. And normally, in my bedroom, I have my bag packed. I come back off a trip, the stuff goes in the wash, and I kind of think about it just goes straight back in the bag again when it comes out. But I kind of haven't been away for a while. So kind of everything's moved around a little bit and in different places. And obviously I did come back from a diving trip and I'm going away on another diving trip. So it's, my dive bag is still packed. But I think the problem with it is for a lot of our trips and a lot of people, it's, I'll do a dive trip, then I'll do a whitewater rafter trip, then I'll do a trekking trip, then I'll do a best of trip where you don't really need too much of that other stuff. So I think I own about 12 duffel bags. So generally, they're all packed at various different stages for different trips. And I kind of go, well, there's more of what I need in that one, so I'll take that one with me. But yeah, I think it's, it's definitely for some people, we see it in the WhatsApp groups, a week in advance where someone's taking a picture of their spare bedroom with all their stuff laid out, all there. And then you get other people who go, oh, we're leaving in 3 hours and I need to throw my stuff in a bag. So I think there's definitely 2 types of people out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I tend to try and pack at least a few days before, although because I am not quite going into the car park, grabbing another bag and then going. But after I get back from this Tube Cow trip, I've got about 48 hours and then I'll be off again. So I actually have spent a little bit of time already kind of trying to pack that bag, because I know I'm not going to have very much time in between. So being a little bit more organized. And I remember, when I first started getting into this, I had it in my head that, you know, the dream one day to make it really, really easy is that I would just have a load of bags that are permanently packed for different destinations, and it makes it really easy to go and travel. And obviously that's a horrendously expensive way to go and do it, so not viable at all. But I think just being able to have, you know, the ease of just grabbing a bag and going. But what I've been able to do over the last couple of years is save myself a little bit of time by having kit that's just always ready to go. And by coming off of one trip, making sure that I've washed it all straight away and it's all kind of ready to just get put back into a bag. That makes a huge difference. But yeah, I suppose, have you got any like specific tips then for people who are listening about, you know, what's something that you've learned or you always do before you go on a trip that really helps make the packing as easy as possible?
I mean, to be honest, even now, I still use our kit lists and use Vamoose, you know, the app that we have for our trips, just to kind of do a quick walkthrough in my head in terms of like, obviously I know what to pack, but it's just kind of that, did I put my head torch battery in? And just seeing that list of things to go through in my head again and go, yeah, that went in the bag, that went in the bag, that went in the bag. That's, for me, is like the final check, if you like. But like, I think my biggest tip is, I mean, I used to be very fortunate before I had children, because I actually had a kit room that was literally just where all my kit lived and was all hung up and everything was in that kit room. I've kind of lost that ability now children have arrived, because it had to go back into being a bedroom. But having stuff laid out and having stuff prepared, I think, is always like the way forward. And like what I do now is I've got either bags or plastic tubs that when I get back from a trip, everything goes back in that tub or in that bag. So when I am about to pack, I know where everything is. So for example, all of my diving kit lives in, like, I've got a massive big dive bag, and not every time do I need everything from that bag. But if everything lives in there, I can kind of sort out and go, no, I don't need to take 3 masks with me. I only need to take 2. Or this time I don't need my big thick wetsuit. I only need my thin one. But everything's there for me to make those decisions. And likewise, in my big, I've got plastic tubs in my wardrobe where like all of my trekking gear lives. You know, all my boots are in there. Everything's together, and it just makes it easy to go, right, how many days am I going for? I need 5 pairs of trekking socks, or I need, 3 tops, or 2 base layers, or whatever, and everything's there together. Because obviously, I don't wear it all of the time. I don't wear, I keep my walking socks separate from my day-to-day socks, so all my walking socks are in my box with all my walking stuff in it. Likewise, things like my beanie, my gloves, all of those things. Those are the things that generally you're running around trying to find when you're thinking about a last minute, when you're thinking about packing last minute. But if they're all put together in a plastic trunk, in a bag that's just got everything in it, it's just, I think, much easier to pull out. Same with sleeping bags. I've got 3-4 different sleeping bags, but they all live in the same place. And it's like, right, I need that sleeping bag for this trip. I want to take that down jacket for this trip. And it's just a lot easier when everything's together for you to consider what you're going to pack and what you're going to take.
Yeah, so I definitely do something similar. I've got a few clear boxes that store like certain types of kit. So I've got one for jackets, and I've got one for, like just general camping stuff, and then trip specific things. And I try and keep all of it together. So there's a dry bag that all of my thermal layers and my gloves and my hats and all that kind of stuff, that all goes into. So it does mean that when I come to packing, I'm not often looking around going, where did I put this? Where did I put this? You kind of know where everything is, and then you just take out what you need for that trip. One of the other things that I always do, and I could have done this trip, like let's say Tube Cow, for instance. I've done Tube Cow quite a lot now. But one of the things that I will always do is I'll go onto our kit list, and I'll read through the kit list and I'll grab everything out that's on the kit list. And then I'll rewatch a packing video, because even though I know what to take, and even though I've done it, 5, 6, 7 times before, I still like just double checking. And then once I've done that, pack the bag. Okay, are there any extras? Make sure I'm on weight and stuff like that. So by having something to reference, I find that my packing is not stressful at all. It was, back in the early days, if you like, when I was thinking, what am I going to need for this? And I'm trying to think off the top of my head, how many days and this and this and this. But actually using the material that we've got, I just kind of go through like a bit of a tick list. Okay, gloves, right, let me go where the gloves are. Let me get that out, put that in the bag. And yeah, that's taken a lot of the stress out of it for me.
I think you're right. I think, the more you go away, the more you become complacent in terms of, I've got everything I need. Like, I know what I need to pack. And then you suddenly get out there and think, and the last thing we want to do as, obviously as leaders of a trip is not have the correct kit or whatever. And, 9 times out of 10, we've generally got double of everything, like, because, you're lending somebody a pair of gloves or you're lending someone a beanie hat or something like that. So you generally take more than what you need anyway. But I think you're right. When you first start out going on trips, you're very meticulous about it because you're, I can't forget this, I can't forget that. I need to make sure I'm going to be warm enough. And, you do really go through the kit list. And that's kind of why I still now to this day go, right, just before I go back, just check through the kit list and make sure I can remember packing all of those things that I've needed to pack. And then 9 times out of 10, I'll end up going, oh yeah, forgot that, and then go and find it and put it in the bag. So, and I think the other tip that I think I've got is to have different size duffel bags. And the reason for this is because if you do adventure travel a lot, for some trips you need an awful lot of stuff, and for other trips you don't need so much. And like, I like to have my bag so I can actually get in it and find what I'm looking for. So I don't have to unpack it all the time and then pack it again when I'm on the trip. But obviously, depending on what trip it is, would be dependent on whether you can get everything in a medium-sized bag, a large bag, or an extra large bag. So kind of having different bags allows you not to stress about actually, because, some trips can be really heavy in terms of the kit that you need to carry. Like if you're on an island peak trek or something like that, you can easily get your luggage allowance up by putting in crampons and ice axes and, things like that. Whereas other trips, if you're only packing shorts and T-shirts and a couple of pairs of flip-flops, you're going to easily get in the weight limit and not have a problem. But ultimately, I want to be able to get into my bag when I'm on the trip. So I don't want to just go, well, I'll buy a large duffel bag because that will sort me out for everything. When actually, I'll take 2 bags with me next week because one will have my dive kit in it and my camera and everything. And then the other one will have my clothes. But actually, I'm going to need 7 T-shirts and a few pairs of boardies and another pair of shoes and my wash bag. And that's pretty much it. That bag will be able to go into a medium-sized duffel bag without any problems. Whereas with all my dive kit, that needs to go in an extra large duffel bag because it's got a lot of kit to go in there, and it's quite bulky kit as well. So I think, that's the thing is that actually, like, by the time you put a sleeping bag in and a down jacket in and you put a pair of boots in there, you can soon fill a large bag without any problems. And actually sometimes having that extra large bag just makes things really easy for you. And actually, again, eliminates one of those stresses by you sat there going, I can't get everything in my bag. And the other thing as well is don't forget, when you're on that trip, if you can only just do the zip up when you're in the UK, the chances are once your kit all starts getting dirty and everything, it's going to be even harder to get everything in the bag. So make sure that you've got some space when you get on the trip to actually be able to put your souvenirs in, but also be able to pack your dirty washing in as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got so many duffel bags at home, and I've actually banned myself from going into any outdoor shops because I know I'll end up walking away with more, because there's always, you can always justify it. Like they're so useful. One of the things I think you touched on that I always make sure I do, and it's a bit more specific to like trekking and hiking trips, but actually it's really relevant to all of the trips. I found it really useful. But so what I do is I'll have a duffel bag that's slightly bigger than I need. So I've got that rummage room. And then I organize my kit in the duffel bags into packing cubes and dry bags. So those are kind of the 2 things that I always take with me. So one of the things that's made my life much easier when it comes to packing is having a good selection of coloured dry bags, and then a few different sized packing cubes. So the packing cubes usually end up packing my basic clothes, t-shirt, socks, trousers, that type of thing. And then the dry bags is where I tend to sort out like my waterproofs, my thermals. I'll wrap my sleeping bag in a dry bag just so it doesn't get wet. So everything ends up being waterproofed. And then the packing cubes as well, I'll probably put them into dry bags depending on the trip. What that helps me with is, let's take, I've got a Mount Tubkal trip coming up. The refuge can get quite busy with everybody's bags lying everywhere, and it does get a little bit confusing. And there's always one person that hasn't done that and hasn't got packing cubes or dry bags, and their stuff ends up exploding everywhere all over the refuge, and that's quite difficult. Whereas for me, I can open up the bag and I go, right, what do I need? Okay, just take out that one dry bag, and it keeps everything very, very organized in the bag. It means that I'm not pulling everything out to try and search for one thing. It makes it super easy to pack again. So yeah, for anyone listening, I would say the best bit of advice that I can give you for packing, in my experience, is organizing your duffel bag with dry bags and packing cubes.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, for me, if I'm going on a trekking trip and I'm leaving stuff in the hotel beforehand, you've got that stuff already prepared. The number of times people are like, right, I need to go and sort my bag out to leave tomorrow morning when we're, in Marrakesh or, you're in Kathmandu. And I'm just like, well, mine's already pretty much done because everything's already where it needs to be. I just need to take those 3 packing cubes out, and everything else is for the trek itself. And I think you're right. The more you prepare beforehand, and, the number of people who, we've introduced over the years to packing cubes, and now they've come back and gone, I don't know how I managed to cope going away without these in the past, because they literally are the best things ever. And the other thing as well is when you're using dry bags in packing cubes, it really does condense your kit down as well a lot more for you to be able to pack more into your bag as well.
Yeah, I find that it definitely just makes it easier if you folded everything up nice and neatly when you're packing. I would say that I find I can pack slightly more in my bag if I rolled everything up than using packing cubes. I can fit quite a lot more in, but the problem with that is that there's just so much stuff. I just got no idea where everything is, and you've got to pull everything out. So yeah, I always use packing cubes and dry bags. And even in my day pack as well, this isn't something that's specific to the duffel bag. Now, I use it quite a lot in my day pack because it does mean that, when I'm on the side of the hill, if it gets windy or the rain starts coming in, I'm straight into my day sack. I know exactly what color what color packing bag I'm after. Makes it really, really easy. So yeah, I think they're fantastic.
Yeah, and then the same thing with the dry bag. Have a dry bag for your dirty washing is always one of my tips. And then my other tip as well with that is to make sure you put those tumble dryer sheets in the bottom of that dry bag, just to kind of make the surprise of opening it up slightly more pleasant after 8 days on the trail or whatever it is. But it's a good way of not making all the rest of your stuff in your bag smell as well, because there's nothing worse than that either.
I do think that's a really good idea.
You can get so much stuff in you can stuff. I mean, it's the same with sleeping bags, isn't it? They're called a stuff sack for a reason. You don't roll your sleeping bag up, you stuff your sleeping bag into a stuff sack. And that's what you need to do with your dirty washing. And you can just get loads of your washing in a dry bag that keeps it all together, stops the smell, stops everything else in your bag smelling. So as well as using a dry bag to separate your stuff, keep your stuff dry, I would also recommend taking one as well for your dirty washing while you're on the trip. And likewise as well, when you're thinking about packing, think about things like your sleeping bag, because most of the time the bag your sleeping bag comes in, again, isn't waterproof. And like what Jake was saying about separating everything into dry bags to make it easy to find. But that also works as well of not getting your kit wet. If your stuff is in a dry bag, it's then going to stay, as the word suggests, dry. Now, as much as, if you're on a ported trek, they will try their hardest to keep your bag dry, and they'll put something over it or they'll put it in another bag. But if the heavens open, Like, there is no way it's guaranteed that your duffel bag is going to turn up to its end location dry. And if you haven't waterproofed everything inside that bag, then there is a chance that your kit is going to get wet. So that's the other reason which dry bags win over packing cubes when it comes to like using them on a trek itself, because you've just got that added protection of the important stuff staying dry. And more importantly to that, the number of times I see people get a sleeping bag out of their duffel bag and it's wet because they haven't put it in a dry bag and they've just used the stuff sack that it's come with. So for me, I put mine in the stuff sack to make sure it's condensed down to the right size. And then I've got a dry bag then as well that I put it in to make sure my sleeping bag stays 100% dry as well when I'm on the trek.
Yeah, I suppose my final tip then for packing and kind of ways to make it a little bit easier and less stressful, would come down to, for me, I believe that packing becomes a lot less stressful with the less things you've got. I think they kind of go hand in hand. The more you have to pack, the more stressful it becomes. So I quite like looking at things and making sure that everything kind of doubles up. So, a good example would be, actually, I was giving a talk last night to a group, and they're heading off to Kilimanjaro, and we were talking about packing. As a very brief example, taking something like a Nalgene water bottle is a fantastic thing to take away with you. If you go into a slightly colder climate, not only is it great for drinking your water out of, but you can also use it as a hot water bottle in the evenings, as long as you insulate it with a sock and you make sure the lid's done nice and tight. But that's an example of where things are doubling up and having multiple purposes. And that reduces the amount of things that you need to take. So by looking at it that way, obviously if it's essential, then do take it, but try not to take too many things that do the same job. And then also placing items inside bigger items. So, you can, if you've got your boots in your bag, you can start filling the inside space on your boots, and that stops rubbish, loads and loads of stuff just flying around in your bag. I would say that I always aim to have in my bag sort of 6 or 7 cubes maximum, and that might include dry bags as well. And then in there might be smaller dry bags and smaller little bags that have separated things. But I always try and have it so that you don't have as like lots and lots of items. You almost Russian doll it, if that makes sense. Yeah,
and I think I love Exped stuff. Exped stuff can be Exped, the brand I'm talking about now. It's a lot pricier than a lot of others. If you were to go onto Amazon, or if you were, to go into Go Outdoors or somewhere like that. But the kit is really good. I love their clear cubes. Their clear cubes are amazing. They're waterproof bags. You can see what's inside them. The other ones that I love that Exped do are their padded cubes as well. So I've got a padded cube where I could put my GoPro in, I put all of my leads in it, my battery pack in it, all of the things that, when you get in and you want to charge your watch and you want to charge your phone and you want, everything is together. You're not, rooting through your bag to try and find everything. It's all in one thing. And, for me, I never unpack my cubes like that. So my padded cubes stay in there all the time. And whenever I go on a trip, I just need to pick up that padded cube and I know it's got everything that I'm going to need in there for that trip. And then the problem comes in there, for example, I keep my my memory card reader that plugs into my computer. And I borrowed it to take some files off a memory card the other day. And I went on a trip and then realized I left it packed in the back of my computer because I had taken it out of that bag and not put it back. Whereas if I never remove anything, I always know. And little things like that, they're not on our packing list because they're not a necessity for everyone. It's just something that I want to have with me. So even going through the kit list, it doesn't say in there, pack your computer memory card reader. That's not on the kit list because you don't want everyone to think, do I need one of those? And we try and simplify the kit list as much as possible. But if I hadn't taken it out of that bag and it kept it where it should have been, I just needed to pick up the bag and I was good to go. So I think that's another key thing as well, is just make sure that if you do take things out, you always go and put them back where they belong.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good bit of advice, and it's something that I've definitely had to get better at, because I don't mind the packing for the trips. I hate the unpacking when you get home. That's the bit that I really, really don't enjoy. But yeah, I'm terrible. So, I have to make sure that when I go to unpack, I actually do put everything back where it's supposed to be, because otherwise I will end up running around looking for it. That makes.
I'm very lucky that my wife won't generally touch my washing when I've come back from a trip, purely because of the smell of it. So, I have to do my own stuff, so it doesn't it's up to me to make sure it goes back. So I can never blame her for that one. But I think, ultimately, I've come to the conclusion now, though, that it's just not worth stressing about. If you forget something, for me now, as I walk into my car, I literally, the only things I check now is, have I got my credit card and have I got my passport and have I got my tickets? Where most of the time we don't need to worry about the tickets because we've got the tickets. But that's literally now. It's as long as I've got my passport, as long as I've got my credit card, I can deal with anything else that I need to deal with, another time. If I've forgotten something in Kathmandu, I can go and get it in Kathmandu. If I've forgotten something in Marrakesh, I can go and buy. It's never that much of an emergency. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. There's only I would only add one more thing to that checking list, and it is, you're exactly right. There's only a few things that I actually check when I leave the house: credit card, passport, my phone. That's the other one. I just make sure I've got my phone, but that's quite often got the tickets and things on. But really, with those three things, there's not much in the countries that we go to that you can't sort. I can't think of any countries really. There'll be a few things that you wish you had, and there might be a few luxury items if you like, but the bare essentials that you need to do the trip that you are on, as long as you've got your credit card, as long as you've got your passport, and as long as you've got your phone, there isn't too much that you can't fix temporarily with those things and get yourself out of trouble. So yeah, those are my final checks. Once the bag's gone in the car, as long as I've got those 3 or 4 things, then I'm pretty happy.
Yeah, and I think, again, I've always got a small rucksack that I take on the plane with me that's got my camera in it, it's got my passport in it, it's got my computer in it, it's got those things, it's got my book for the plane. That's, for me, it's put that one in the car and then check in there, passport, yeah, I've got that, I've got my phone, everything I need, then I can, and I've got a document wallet that, I never take anything out of the document wallet. My cards live in there all the time. So, yeah, I think those are my top tips for packing and making sure you've got everything. But I think the biggest thing is just don't stress. The number of times, it happens, your bag gets lost. Your bag doesn't arrive for a couple of days until you're on the trip. You get by, you can manage. So I think, ultimately, if you listen to mine and Jake's podcast from last week where things went wrong, and, they didn't see their bags for 50 hours, but, they still managed to carry on. They didn't smell too good, but, they still actually, they didn't need anything. They could go and get a toothbrush. They can, so I don't think it's worth stressing about. Just follow the kit list, pack what's in there. And if you've unfortunately forgot anything, well, you can either beg, steal, or borrow it. Maybe not steal it, but you could beg or borrow it. Or you can go and buy it. So I think that's the easy solution to that.
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
Perfect. I don't know what just happened to Jake on the screen then. He just suddenly imploded in fireworks there. Well, Jake, thanks for coming on and giving us your tips today for packing. I hope you've all found those useful. And obviously, it's great to talk about it when I need to go and pack a bag, because it will just put a few things in my mind. But again, like I said, if I forget anything, I can just go and buy it. So it's not a major problem. Anyway, that's it from me. I'm off to pack my bag. Jake's off to pack his bag. And I'll be back next week with another episode of the Bucketlister podcast. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Bucketlister podcast. Be sure to click follow to be alerted for next week's episode. For more travel inspiration, check us out at www.thebucketlistcompany.co.uk or follow us on socials. See you next time.